somebody has to say that the real stars of affairs like this are you guys. Because you're not here that has anything to do with movies, you're not here because it has anything to do with pop music, you're not here because of video games. You're here because of books, and you ought to give yourself a hand. I mean, you sent my kids to college. And I appreciate it. The reason that things like this are uncomfortable for me, in particular, is because I was raised to believe that writers were the secret agents of the arts, and that we pretty much went and had to go unobserved and unseen, and that way we gathered material. We saw what people were doing, you know, and we were able to bring it back and work it in our stories. And for a long time, that was my life. And then at some point, things changed. And I know just where that happened. It was in Pittsburgh. Somewhere here is my friend and collaborator on a book about the Red Sox, a book called Faithful, about the 2004 World Series that the Red Sox won. Stuart Onan, who's from Pittsburgh, and I don't know, I think that the Red Sox were too rich for Stuart's blood, because he returned to Pittsburgh to root for the Pirates, and for whatever reason. But Pittsburgh was where I ended up on my first real author tour. It was for a book called The Shining. I'd never been on a book tour before, I didn't know anything about it, and I found out that what you do is scarf media. That's, at that time, there were a lot of shows like AM Pittsburgh, AM Atlanta. I don't know whether there was an AM Savannah or not. Presumably TV has come to Savannah, because I checked the weather this morning and decided there's some guy named Big John or something like that is giving me a total scoop. So you go there and you go and you do the morning TV shows along with the Karate Kids and the grandma who just won a jitterbug contest or whatever it is. And you get 5 minutes and you talk about your book. And the bottom line is always the same, you know, at your bookstore now. And somebody goes out and get it. And the last thing that you do before moving on to the next city is you do a dinner that's usually put on by the newspapers. Of course, I'm dating myself because in those days newspapers had money to do things. It was a long time ago, kiddies. But anyway, so in Pittsburgh, the restaurant where we did this was at the top of this thing called The Incline. You went up there on a cable car or something like that. I don't know, does that ring a bell, Stuart? Are you here? The Incline, that's it. So I went up there and I'd done this, and it was the last city on the tour. And you got to remember, I'm a kid, I'm 26, 27 years old, something like that. And I was struck by this terrible ailment that we've all suffered at one time or another, where you don't really want to get too far from the men's room, if you know what I mean. And this was a very fancy restaurant, and I felt really homesick and kind of blue. And I had this intestinal discomfort, and I had to excuse myself and run to the bathroom, which was this sort of Babylonian splendor thing. It was marble and columns, and there was a restroom attendant who was 108 years old, you know, Simonized skull. You get, you know what I mean, little thin guy with a towel over his arm and the quarters in the little dish. This thing had everything but doors on the stalls. So I'm in there in the room where even Superman has to sit down, and you have to try to be a little bit delicate. Let's just say everything came out all right. But it was sad. I mean, I was homesick and sitting on the john and sad, and I'm thinking things can't get any worse. And here comes the 108-year-old washroom attendant. with a pad and a pen. And for the first time in my life, someone said, "Aren't you Stephen King?" He said, "I saw you on AM Pittsburgh. Can I have your autograph?" Now, I had given autographs before, but that was the first time I gave one to like a total stranger that wasn't at an autographing. And I did it while I was sitting on the crapper. You can make of that whatever you will. But that's a more or less true story, I guess. But the second time that that happened to me was in a Nathan's in New York. Nathan's Hot Dogs, and I was at that time probably 29, and I'd been asked a couple of times. But I'm having a hot dog, I'm sitting at the counter, and not to belabor the point, my hair really was black then instead of this sort of no cover kind of thing. And I had a big black beard. And I'm eating my hot dog and reading my book, because I go everywhere with a book. Nerdy, but it's me, what can I say? And I look up, and the guy's through the pass-through in the thing, you know, cooking the stuff, and he's looking at me. And he sees me looking at him, and right away he's back, he's cooking stuff. So I read my book, and I look up, and he's looking at me. And then he looks away, and finally I'm thinking to myself, okay, he's gonna come out and ask for my autograph, and at least I'm not in the shit house, you know? So I'm eating a hot dog. And he did, he came out, and he had the pad, and he had the pencil. And he said, "Aren't you Francis Ford Coppola?" Because I had the glasses there, and I said, "Yes, I am." And I signed the autograph, Francis Coppola. With such pleasure. But what happens to me mostly now is this kind of weird cross connection in people's minds. And people will come up to me, even to this day, and say, "Aren't you Steven Spielberg?" And I always say that yes, I am, but they don't really believe it after they talk to me for a little while. But we're supposed to be secret agents, and we're supposed to kind of observe culture. And we're supposed to observe people when they don't know they're being looked at. So I'm a big baseball fan. And one of the places where you observe human nature at its rawest is at the ballpark, particularly when the team is losing. So I decided that I was going to start wearing this cap pulled down low, and I was going to wear sunglasses. And then this 8-year-old kid says to his mother, "Look, Ma, there's Stephen King in sunglasses." So, anyway, I mean, to me, all this is really kind of a weird thing. Anyway, as to what I'm doing or what I have been doing in terms of the actual work, lately it seemed to me like what I'm up to is cleaning house. I did a book a couple of years ago called Under the Dome, which I think is going to be a Showtime miniseries, sort of like their answer to Game of Thrones on home box office. And I originally had the idea back when I was in college and kind of put it on the back burner because it seemed like an awful lot of research. I'm a fairly lazy writer. I like stuff when I can make it right up out of my head. And this looked like it was actually going to be work. But the idea would never completely let go. And so finally I decided that I was going to write that, and I had a heck of a good time. And in fact, it worked out so well that I thought to myself, well, okay, I'm going to go back to another old idea that I had, and this was in the 70s. I taught high school for a while, and it was, I think, probably 8 years after John Kennedy's assassination. And we were sitting around in the teacher's room, and one of the people that I taught with said, "I wonder what life would have been like if they hadn't gotten him." And in those days, everybody talked about they, because there was supposed to have been this big secret conspiracy. And I knew that when I finally got around to writing this book, that I would get a lot of people who would say, "Well, Oswald was a patsy, this and that, and the other thing." But I thought to myself, what a great chance to